couple of tourists were driving in the middle of the Australian outback. Despite being advised not to do so, they decided to do a lot of their driving at night time. The main reason it is best to travel during the day in the red centre is due to the fact that it is hard to spot wildlife crossing the road, and also, if you were to break down, help is a very long way away. But the couple were excited to continue their adventure in their trusty Volkswagen Combi nonetheless. They were driving down a long straight when they both noticed some headlights appear behind them. The car was quickly approaching them. The man noticed that this car was right behind him and it was beginning to frustrate him, so he slowed down to encourage the driver to overtake him. But the man did not overtake them. They both started to feel nervous when the car started to flash them. Reluctant to pull over, they ignored the man's attempts to get their attention. When the man drove alongside them, he gestured at them excitedly to pull over. He told them, "You've got sparks coming out of your exhaust. You should pull over and we will take a look." Despite the initial reluctance, they agreed to pull over. The woman looked at her partner and saw what looked like a friendly conversation with the stranger. He went to the front of the Combi and asked his partner to jump in the driver's seat and rev the car when they asked. The lady heard more friendly chatter and some laughter. She then heard her boyfriend say to put her foot down. She put her foot in the accelerator, and as she did, she saw a flash and heard what she thought was the car backfiring. And then there was complete silence. Before she knew it, the strange man was at her car window, pointing a gun in her face. Shocked and caught completely off guard, the woman raised her hands in protection. The man demanded she get out of the car, and he tied her hands with some makeshift homemade handcuffs. He attempted to also tie her legs and tape her mouth, but she resisted. He led her to his car, where he threw her in the back and walked away. Stunned, frightened, and having no idea what was happening, her instincts kicked in. While she was in the back of the car, she thought she heard the sound of something being dragged along the ground. She managed to wrangle her way out of the homemade handcuffs, and feeling completely lost, she ran into the desert, not sure of where to go. She ran for a few minutes before suddenly the entire area she was running in was illuminated. The man had returned, noticed she had escaped, and decided to use his car headlights to search the outback for her. Luckily, before being spotted, she hid behind a bush. Initially, she heard only silence, but soon she could hear footsteps. They were getting closer. She covered her mouth in fear. She was terrified that the man would find her. Soon, the footsteps did not sound so close. Then, she heard a sound she recognized, her Combi starting and being driven away. She thought of fleeing at this point, but knew the man would be back, and she still had nowhere to go. Sure enough, she began to hear footsteps again, this time really, really close. He was not giving up. She kept her cool, terrified her heavy breathing would give herself away. She heard another car start and drive away. She was convinced the man would return though, so she still didn't move. She was right as well. The man returned on another 3 occasions, but he could not find her. Hours passed, and the woman was frozen still, petrified that any move would cost her her life. But then she heard the sound of a vehicle, a road train, roaring. She knew it was now or never, and sprinted back to the road. She ran into the middle of the road and gestured at the truck to pull over. In the dead of night, the truck did not notice her straight away. The driver could not stop his massive road train for another kilometre. He had no idea if he hit the woman or not. Thankfully, she was okay, and he drove her away. She had a hell of a story to tell, and the shocked driver took her straight to the nearest police station. Once the woman told her story, the police swarmed on the location, looking for evidence. It didn't take them long to locate their combi, a few kilometers away, dumped in the desert. What they were yet to locate was the woman's boyfriend. He was nowhere to be seen. Another man that was nowhere to be seen was the mystery offender, who seemingly had no motive. This caused a media frenzy, with people quickly starting to question the female and wondering if her story was actually true. Then came a piece on television that changed everything. Police released CCTV footage, which featured a man walking into a store close by to the scene and at a time just after it took place. Police pleaded to the public to help identify the mystery man. Many people called, with the police managing to track down the person in the video. At a similar time, police found crucial DNA evidence in the combi, on the gear stick and in other areas, which belonged to an unidentified male. The mystery man was identified, captured, and arrested, though there are still some skeptical people out there that believe that this man is innocent. It was a hot summer's day in a quiet and unassuming city in the west of Australia. Everyone was celebrating Australia Day. Barbecue, beers, and swims at the pool are a common way to spend this day. As the day came to an end, two young housemates tossed a coin in the air. The winner of the coin toss would get to sleep in a hammock out their backyard. The perk of this, of course, was it was a very comfortable and convenient way to escape the heat. Nearby, a middle-aged man who lived alone switched off all of his house lights and headed to bed. A third, elderly and retired man fell asleep on his couch. This city was not prepared for the events that would follow. Following these Australia Day shootings, the city was rife with anxiety and a new sense of security. People who would leave doors unlocked and windows open no longer did so. Those who loved sleeping on their balconies and verandas in the summer no longer had the courage to do so. Weeks went by and police had no suspects. Then one humid and stormy night, an incident occurred. A young girl needed to go to the bathroom, and ever since Australia Day, this is something she had been terrified to do. Why? Because instead of a traditional toilet, this household had an outhouse. What made this especially terrifying for the young girl was that behind the outhouse was an open field. She was especially terrified to go to the outhouse at night in case the man responsible for the shootings would be waiting for her in the field. She held off as long as she could, but she needed to go, so she took a lantern and headed to the outhouse. A big bolt of lightning lights up the open field behind the outhouse. The whole area was illuminating. Standing not far from the girl, she saw a man in dark clothing staring in her direction. She screamed and ran inside. Was this the man responsible for the shootings? The girl didn't know. She just needed to get out of there. For the remainder of the summer, she used a potty and refused to use the outhouse. Weeks later, the little girl came across a newspaper stating that they had caught the man responsible for the Australia Day shootings. No longer did the city have to live in fear as the man confessed to the crimes. He paid the price for murdering 3 innocent strangers and also injuring 2 others in separate incidents. The little girl instantly recognized the man arrested as the same man she saw staring at her from behind her outhouse. Whether his presence there was coincidental or on purpose, she's very glad she got away from him. I was in the attic of my late stepfather's home. He had very recently passed away, and it was my job to clean out his house so I could then sell it. Tucked away in the corner, I found an old dusty cardboard box. Of course, curiosity would get the better of me, and I opened the box. At first, it didn't seem like there was much in the box, but I began to dig deeper, and that was when I saw it. My stepdad died suddenly and peacefully one night, and it was up to me to organise the funeral. My mother passed away years ago. In his later years, my stepdad mostly kept to himself. He didn't really have any friends or anything like that. I had trouble tracking down any old friends from his younger years that may have liked to attend his funeral, so ended up just being me and my brother. Whilst we were at his tombstone, I noticed a shadowy man in the distance behind a tree. For a split second, I caught a glimpse of their face, and I felt like I recognized it, as difficult as it was to see. As eerie and spooky as it was, the man vanished, and it wasn't until later that I properly thought about the incident. It was the following weekend. I started cleaning his house and came across that suspicious, dusty cardboard box. I didn't know what I was expecting to find. I was just curious as it had a lot of old stuff in there and maybe I could find something of value. But what I did find completely shook me. It was a newspaper from a long time ago. The headline was eye-catching. It read, "Man kills entire family, gets death sentence." But what disturbed me wasn't so much the headline, It was the photo accompanying it. There was a man in handcuffs being escorted by police. It was unmistakable. The man in this picture looked exactly like my late stepfather. I rushed downstairs. Thankfully, I was yet to pack his computer away. It didn't take too long for me to find details on the crime and the assailant. I won't be going into any details, but it read that this man killed his whole family and was given a death sentence. It was later commuted to life in jail. He was released after just 8 years and released on parole. The man would later change his name and start a new life. I was in shock. I could not recall any indication that he was a man capable of this. He was kind, respectful, and never violent. I did, however, remember something from my childhood. Many times, I recall waking up in the middle of the night to my door slightly ajar. Once my eyes adjusted to the dark, I noticed there was someone staring at me from the door. It was my stepfather. This sent chills down my spine. Did he do this as he was perhaps thinking of wiping us out so he could start a new family? I'll never know. I then realized why the face I saw at the funeral was so familiar. It was that same stare my stepfather would give me when looking into my room at night. Was he the man at his own funeral? Was it perhaps a son nobody knew about? I had to push this to the back of my mind. I'm just glad that I managed to survive my childhood, because he had many, many opportunities to wipe us out as well.